folding in the clutch, mental meltdowns, and coming up small in the big moment. These are the worst chokes in NBA playoff history. Julius Randall. The 2020-2021 season was an unusual one for the New York Knicks as a whole, especially for Julius Randall. Randall and the Knicks had a breakout year as he earned his first All-Star selection and also won the NBA's Most Improved Player award. The Knicks showed improvement in their defense and secured the 4th seed in the playoffs after being bottom feeders for years since Carmelo Anthony left the team. However, Randall struggled heavily in the playoffs, as did other younger players that were core to the team like RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly. The Hawks targeted Randall on defense, and Randall's shooting slump got to the point where they were guarding him with Clint Capella and having Clint help off of Randall, allowing Randall to shoot at will, bricking 3 after 3. Randall had many mental lapses in the series, and his frustration boiled over as shot after shot kept clanking off of the rim. And with Mitchell Robinson, the anchor of the Knicks defense, on the sidelines due to injury, and Randall bricking at a historic rate, the Hawks stalked Randall on the court, dared him to shoot, which made scoring that much more difficult for the role players as they could help off of Randall. Randall stopped going to therapy right before the playoffs that year, and it was evident that Randall's frustration and his bad body language were a result of him not being right mentally. And you know mental health is important. You know, the GPT team goes to therapy. So this isn't like an ad for an online therapy company or something, right? No? What the? For real? Yeah, dude, we just have values here. Alright, cool.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Anyways, it didn't help that the momentum of the series was immediately seized by Trae Young and the Hawks after Game 1, when Trae led his team to a win by 2 points, bombing 3-pointers in the Knicks logo, and becoming the ultimate villain with NYC fans, complete with the game winner. New York won Game 2, but that would be their only win of the entire series, with Randall shooting at a horrendous clip. From being an all-star, all-NBA player, and inspiring figure for the Knicks all throughout the season, the leader of the team averaged 18 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 assists, well below his season averages. And by the end of the first 3 games, Randall had the worst field goal percentage in NBA playoff history in the shot clock era, with an absolutely brutal 24.1% shooting clip. And as the series went on, it didn't get much better. At the end of the series, not only did Randall turn the ball over a crazy 4.6 times per game, but he somehow managed to make just 29.8% of his shots, hitting on just 33% of his 3-pointers. Randall had been balling out during the pandemic when fans weren't in the stands. So let's just say we had stage fright, because his performance in that playoff series is just appalling. And unfortunately for Randall, he stunk it up again this year in 2023, as although his overall shooting percentage has gone up, his 3-point percentage and free throw percentages went even lower than last time. And he's still averaging a sky-high 3.5 turnovers a game, including 6 in the heartbreaking Game 4 loss to the Heat to go down 3-1 in the series. After being eliminated by Jimmy Butler and the Heat, having bad body language in this series, and overall playing poorly again, New York fans are calling for Randall to be traded. However, I think I gotta give Randall a pass on this one, as he was playing with an injured ankle that he re-injured against the Cavs while he was having one of his best games of the playoffs so far. Also, something to consider is that Randall likely was not able to play as aggressively as he wanted to inside on offense due to being afraid of hurting his ankle again, which he re-aggravated against the Cavs in their closeout game win. But hey, Randall has been historically bad in the playoffs, and I'm not mad at Knicks fans for wanting him out of there. But despite how bad Randall's been, we've seen worse, because selling in round 1 and round 2 is one thing, but it's even worse to do it in the finals. Dirk Nowitzki. Let's take it back to 2006. We all remember Dirk Nowitzki was probably the best foreign player the league had ever seen. The German sharpshooter would turn it on to another level in the playoffs, because in 2006, he would average 25.4 points per game and 10.2 rebounds per game. However, in 06, on the biggest stage in basketball, and in his first finals run ever, the big man choked. The Mavericks kicked off a series with 2 home wins, and it was looking like they were in the driver's seat too, until Game 3, when the Heat won at home, thanks in part to Dwayne Wade's 42 points and 13 rebounds, but also because of Dirk Nowitzki. With just 3.4 seconds left to go, Dirk drew a foul and got a chance to tie up the game at the free throw line to hopefully force overtime and possibly win Game 3, which would have created an insurmountable 3-0 lead, as no team has ever come back to win a series in the NBA. But my man Dirk botched it by clanking 1 of 2 to give Miami the win. On paper, the Mavericks still had the advantage, but once again, Dwayne Wade was on fire, and in Game 4, Dirk dropped a dud, shooting 2 2 of 14 from the field for a paltry 16 points. In all fairness, the Mavericks as a whole had a bad game, scoring the least ever fourth quarter points in the finals, but you have to give a lot of that to Dirk. Being the #1 option on that team, they needed him to perform better. At that point, with the series tied at 2-2, the Mavericks still had a chance to win the finals. But thanks to Dwayne Wade's 25 free throws in Game 5, an extremely controversial call by the ref 9 seconds to the game's end, Miami won Game 5 as well. After that, Game 6 was the same story, giving Miami the championship title. Dirk had his chance to go up 3-0, but now the script was against him.
That ain't no problem. Huh? That ain't no problem.
Luckily for Disco Dirk, he would have a chance to redeem himself in the NBA script and get a championship later, and he definitely took it, but at the expense of putting another of the game's legend on this very list, LeBron James. Now, as much as I love me some LeBron James and see him as one of the best players to ever play the game, if not the best, a list of the top playoff chokes would not be complete without the losingest finals player of all time. And although LeBron is many people's GOAT and has impeccable playoff stats, I can't hate, man. I just gotta point out some of his worst work ever. Even the best fall down sometimes. And in 2011, against the Dallas Mavericks, LeBron absolutely fell down. But let's take it back to that infamous summer in 2010, when LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade had just linked up in Miami, forming a super team. After making the decision and joining the Heat, LeBron made a promise to fans at a Heat rally. He promised,
"Not one, championships."
Not two.
LeBron, tell us about that.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
Man, I'm dead.
that ain't bad at all, man. But what was bad was his performance against the Mavs in the finals. The Heat were definitely the favorites. With Dwayne Wade and Bosh teaming up with the King, everyone thought they were going to run through Dirk and the Mavericks, not to mention that Dirk had just choked in the finals a few years prior. Game 1 ended 92-84 in favor of the Heat, with LeBron scoring 24 points. There wasn't much he could do to prevent Miami from losing Game 2 at home, as he came up clutch with an assist to Chris Bosh in Game 3 to restore the Heat's lead. But Game 4 is one LeBron definitely wants to forget. And I'm pretty sure he wants us to forget too, because it was embarrassing.
Even though we up 2-1, I still feel like our back is against the wall. And this is a must-win game.
This was the original LeChoke game. LeBron had still not won a championship, and many people used this fact to troll him mercilessly back in the day. The internet would clown LeBron and say that this was the reason that he couldn't succeed at the highest level, because even with a super team, he couldn't win. In the entire Game 4, LeBron dropped a total of 8 points. Yeah, just 8. He went 3 for 11 from the field and ended up with 7 assists and a high 4 turnovers. And the Heat ended up losing that game and the next, when LeBron finally found his groove, scoring 21 points, but it was too little too late. On the bright side, Dirk redeemed himself after losing to D-Wade 5 years earlier with a heroic finals performance and gave the Mavs their first ever championship title, while LeBron would respond by delivering back-to-back championships to Miami, and would go on to have heroic finals performances of his own. So whether you're a fan of Mark Cuban or a fan of LeBron, you'd still end up winning a championship either way. So those two got to redeem themselves, but this dude right here might never get a chance to, and that's because after his playoff choke, he might be on a one-way ticket to the China League to play for the Shanghai Sharks. And you know I'm talking about Dillon Brooks. Now, Dillon Brooks is one of, if not the outright, most hated player in the NBA for a couple years. And that's because of both his play style and his crap talking.
Yeah, like pom-poms. You know what I'm saying? Like.
And to keep it a buck with you, having come into the league as a second-round pick and being mostly a below-average shooting role player, you would think he would stay in his lane and not mouth off the way he does. But you know what they say, the people with the least to say the most. Dillon's lousy behavior has gotten him into a whole lot of trouble on the court. He tackled an injured Golden State Warriors guard Gary Payton Jr. In 2023, he shoved an innocent camera operator out of frustration during the Grizzlies' loss to the Miami Heat. Dude just laid him out for no reason. The former of the offenses got him suspended, but the latter got him fined. He also dissed Draymond Green earlier this year and has general animosity for him and the Warriors.
Draymond talks a lot. You talk a lot now, so if you have 4 rings, sure you talk a lot more.
But in the Grizzlies' eyes, my dude didn't cross any lines he couldn't uncross, as he still had a role on the team, and largely the support of his teammates, until he spoke out against LeBron. And you know LeBron has La Men in Black to take care of people who cross him both on and off the court. You'd expect that after 20 seasons in the NBA, everyone would have learned not to poke the bear with LeBron, but not Brooks. He intentionally went after him, and when the Grizzlies faced the Lakers in the 2023 playoffs, Brooks showed up to a post-game conference like a heel in a wrestling show and called LeBron.
I don't care, he's old.
We here at the GPT prefer to think of LeBron as well-seasoned, like a fine-aged wine. But I digress. Dylan poked the bear. He even said it himself, and he really decided to wake the lion when he said,
I don't respect no one until they come and give me 40.
The series started with the Lakers win, and then the Grizzlies tied the series up, which is when Dylan started all that trash talking. But come game 3, he had to eat those words. First, Dylan got ejected 17 seconds into the second half of game 3 because he hit LeBron in the groin. This was after the Lakers were literally laying the wood to them, being up by over 30 points in the freaking first quarter alone. Obviously, the Grizzlies lost that game. Then they lost game 4. Then they won game 5 to make it 3-2, but it didn't really matter because the Lakers came back at home in game 6 and demolished them with a different type of aggression. They ended up eliminating the Grizzlies with a 40-point gap, 125-85, to knock them out of the playoffs. Despite all the talk from Brooks and the rest of the Grizzlies, he averaged a pathetic 10.5 points, 3 rebounds, and 1.8 assists through the series on 31.2% from the field, 23.8% in three-pointers, and around 70% from free throws. Dude was making Julius Randall look like freaking Michael Jordan out there. Definitely some of the worst numbers of any playoff player with a consistent role in recent memory. And after the Grizzlies were sent to Cancun, the franchise board of the Grizzlies decided they had had enough of Brooks' antics and announced that they would not be extending his contract, meaning he'll be a free agent by season's end and is probably set to make a lot less than he would have if he had re-signed with the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies' exact words were, Dylan Brooks will not be back under any circumstances. Dang, bro. Not even down the line if he became an all-star? No, under any circumstances. And if the GPT's research is correct, he could be a free agent by the end of next season, and the next, and the next, and the next, and then maybe he'll get lucky and play for the East Australia Cave Bats or something. Nah, I'm just playing, man. Dylan Brooks will probably find a role on a team in the NBA still. But his reputation is severely damaged, and it's clear to say that with this performance, he fumbled the bag. And has Brooks come out to own up to his shortcomings? No way, Jose. But luckily, not every player in the NBA is as callous. Dennis Johnson. Now, the year was 1978, and the Seattle Supersonics were facing the Washington Bullets in the finals. Now, neither of these team franchises exist anymore, with the Supersonics moving to OKC with the Thunder, and the Bullets becoming the Wizards. So the GPT research team had to dig deep into the annals of history to find records of this game. But the horrendous choke in this series from star player Dennis Johnson stands out in even the dustiest of NBA history books. DJ legit led the Seattle Supersonics to the NBA final and abandoned them there. Yeah, the run to the finals was unlikely, but DJ made it happen for the Sonics. And there they were in the 78 finals, 4 wins away from glory against the Washington Bullets. One reason we'll never forget this series is its competitiveness. The Sonics got the lead in the series 3 times, but the Bullets came back each time to go into Game 7 tied at 3 apiece. The stage was set for a young Johnson to shine, only for him to do the exact opposite. Former Celtics star had a nightmare game, with one of his worst playoff performances in his entire career in the most important game of his life, finishing with just 4 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists, coupled with a 0% shooting from the field, 0 for 14, and committing 3 turnovers as well. Pretty much as bad as it gets. But to make it hurt even more, the Sonics team that seemed dependent on Johnson lost the game by just 6 points, meaning if Johnson had had just a horrible performance, not the worst performance he could have possibly had, but just a bad one, making 2 or 3 shots in the game, they probably would have gotten the win. But he didn't. Instead, he choked extremely hard. And he even admitted it in an interview before promising he'd never let it happen again. True to his words, Dennis Johnson led the Sonics to the finals the following season and won it all, also winning finals MVP in the process, becoming one of the all-time great redemption stories in the NBA. And up next is an equally horrendous Game 7 finals performance that unfortunately never found redemption. John Starks. Every player has a career-defining moment, and John Starks messed his up big time. An all-time fan favorite and one of the New York Knicks' greatest players to date, John Starks played an integral part to the Knicks' rise in the early 90s. Going from being an undrafted player that was working at grocery stores to playing in the NBA, Starks was a feel-good story and had electrifying talent. From incredible finishes on the inside, to epic dunks over NBA stars, to knockdown three-point shooting and clutch play, John Starks was a big reason why the Knicks were in Game 7 of the 1994 NBA Finals against the Houston Rockets. Now, when the Knicks made the Finals in '94, it was their first time in over 2 decades. The series was tied at 2-2 after Game 4. The Knicks got the usually all-important win in Game 5 to take a 3-2 lead and to have 2 chances at bringing home the title. Starks once again came up clutch for the Knicks, scoring 16 in the 4th quarter of Game 6. And with just seconds on the clock, Starks heaved up a shot which was a potential game winner, but Hakeem Olajuwon made a superb block, coming out of nowhere to block Starks and drag the game on a bit further. The Rockets were able to steal the win in the dying seconds and take it to Game 7 tied 3-3. Now, despite having all the momentum, the Knicks still had a good chance to beat the Rockets in Game 7. The game was close throughout, and just like the Dennis Johnson Game 7, the Knicks were playing well despite Starks playing horribly. Much like Johnson, Starks was a shadow of himself in Game 7. The Knicks eventually lost 84-90 by 6 points. Starks shot 2 for 18, including a horrible 0 of 11 from 3, which culminated in one of the most disastrous air balls you'll ever see in the final minute that didn't even reach the basket. And in the end of the game, Starks bricked 3 or 4 three-pointers consecutively when the Knicks absolutely needed a bucket to stay alive. It was like the more he missed, the more Starks was pressing. Unfortunately, the Knicks lost their sole chance at championship glory that night, and Starks went on to become their all-time leader in three-point field goals after that. He even broke the record for most three-pointers in one season for the Knicks in 94-95, but all those shots never mattered. The shots that did matter built a house in Houston in '94. And speaking of the Houston Rockets, that's a perfect segue into the last performance on our list, where not just a single player sold, but an entire team choked. And that was the 2018 Houston Rockets. Now, after being eliminated by LeBron and the Lakers in the second round, the Warriors dynasty may or may not be over. Given that they've won 4 out of the last 8 titles, they still may have a chance if they all re-sign. However, in an alternate reality, it could have ended with 2 titles if the Rockets had stuck to the task. Prior to meeting in the Western Conference Finals in 2018, the Warriors had pretty much owned the Rockets in the playoffs. They'd met 10 times, and the Warriors had won 8 of those games. Being the defending NBA champions and having Kevin Durant, everyone expected the Warriors super team to walk all over James Harden in Houston. But Chris Paul, James Harden, and the Rockets had other plans. Game 1 was a 13-point win for the Warriors, to which the Rockets responded with an impressive 22-point blowout win in Game 2. Curry, Thompson, Green, and Durant weren't having it though, as they trashed Houston in a whopping 126-85 win in Game 3, only for the Rockets to respond with back-to-back wins in Games 4 and 5. Suddenly, the seemingly unstoppable Warriors dynasty was about to be cut short by the likes of PJ Tucker, Clint Capella, Eric Gordon, and of course James Harden. Once again, the Warriors responded with an emphatic win in Game 6 to force a Game 7. And as is tradition in the postseason, Chris Paul was forced to leave the series in Game 6 with a hamstring injury. And Game 6 was really the first sign that there was cracks in the Rockets, because Houston had gone ahead by 17 points in the first quarter, only to record just 25 points in the entire second half. And that's still a franchise record low for scoring in any half of the postseason. And that disastrous second half followed them into Game 7. They started on the right foot, controlling the first half and leading by 11 points at the end of the half. But they let it slip in the second half, just like in Game 6, as they went behind with 4 minutes left in the third quarter and never got the lead back. Now, the Warriors were on something different that day, making 16 threes, going 16 of 39 from the three-point line. However, this doesn't change the fact that the Houston Rockets absolutely sold this series in Game 7. Despite James Harden scoring 32 points and having 6 assists, as a team, the Rockets were absolute trash, specifically from three-point range. It still sounds wild to me, but these dudes somehow went 1 for 30 from the three-point land, including 27 consecutive misses as a team. That was a record for consecutive missed threes in a playoff game, and no way were they going to win with shooting this disappointing. And so, due to back-to-back chokes in Game 6 and Game 7, as well as Chris Paul's unavailability, the Houston Rockets were finished, and the Warriors would go on to win yet another title.